Hello, and welcome to Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg, where we explore self-doubt, imposter characters, and sometimes real-life con artists. We are so excited about our guest today.
We certainly are. Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke have been best friends for over 30 years and survived high school and college together. They've co-authored 8 novels, including the Amazon Charts bestseller, The Good Widow. Their latest book, Forever Hold Your Peace, is out now. In addition to writing books, they created a podcast, We Fight So You Don't Have To, Lessons from a 30-Year Friendship. They also appear monthly on a San Diego news station to share their favorite book club picks. They both reside in San Diego, California with their families and several rescue dogs. Liz and Lisa, thank you for joining us. We are thrilled.
Welcome.
We're happy to be
Yay! Happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I just want to kick us off by saying my first memory of you guys is we were on our book tour for our debut novel, The Woman Inside. This was 2019, back when the world was a very different place. And we were in San Diego, and you had both reached out and invited us for a pre-event drink, which was like so awesome because, of course, we had heard of you guys. You were a writing duo, longtime friends. You had the story that we had, with variations, but you were kind of the OG, and you had published multiple books and were really gracious to invite us to spend time together and just kind of have a fun chat of drinks. And I was in total anxiety spiral because, it was the part of the job that I really struggle with, which is the events and promoting. So I am so grateful to you guys because the generosity that you gave to us and that you give to other authors, I see it with your podcasts, with your events, with your recommendations, is like really unparalleled. So thank you for that.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's really nice. Well, we were
excited. You guys wanted to have dinner with us.
Oh, yeah.
So we felt the same way.
Yeah, we were so excited, and we always love to meet authors when they come to San Diego, but author duos is like, that's our jam. So much to talk about,
Yeah, and we had a great time.
There's a lot of duos now.
There are now. We certainly, if there were as many back then, we certainly were not aware of them. I mean, you guys were very much on our radar, but we were not aware of many others at the time. But I think you're right. We've gone a little more duos, and also you have a lot of kind of author collabs now. You have 3 or 4 authors getting together on projects. So it's interesting, and it's sort of like almost like people are doing a lot more side projects and sort of trying to diversify their some of it's shorter stuff, some of it's audio stuff, some is proper novel, but it's kind of cool to see people switch it up. Yeah.
Right. Well, and certainly Greg and I understand the concept of safety in numbers because this is such an isolating thing we do. So, and then to do it with a longtime friend who kind of gets you on a level that, not anyone else, maybe your spouse, maybe your family members get you, but not even. It's like a creative symmetry.
Right.
But could you tell us, for the listeners that aren't familiar with your guys' story, like how this began? How did you decide we're going to be writing soulmates?
You want to take this one, Liz?
Look through the camera.
I always take this one. Do you guys have that kind of relationship where you have your questions you take, and I'm throwing you for a loop? I'm going to let you answer.
Oh, I was like, you can't.
Your face. You were.
So we met our freshman year of high school. We're from a smaller-ish town in San Diego, and we became friends. We had a love of reading. Our parents, my mom was Lisa's dad's real estate agent, if you really want to make this. So we ended up going to college together.
I don't normally include that in my answer, but that's fine.
So I think she sold him like 3 houses. But anyway, we went to college together, and we joined the same sorority. We had the same major, and it was then we started talking about maybe writing a book together one day. We took a theater class where we had to actually write a 1-act play, which I found the other day, and we wrote it on our IBM word processor, not to age ourselves, and almost killed each other. And then we were like, oh, this sounds great. Like, we should do this again one day.
we're bad like that.
Yeah. So go
I was
ahead.
going to say, so the near homicide is what really forged the bond
Yeah.
long term.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
In
I think
hindsight,
that's
maybe we should have started with
There
thrillers.
you go. Yeah,
I
An
right
know.
into
author,
it.
an author who kills her
Yeah.
co-author. Yeah.
So then fast forward, graduate from college. Lisa goes into TV production. She was a TV producer for like 15 years, right, Lisa? And
Mhm.
I went into the pharmaceutical industry. So it wasn't until about 10 years later that Lisa reached out and she's like, hey, I think we should like write that book now. And I think I'd either just had a baby or I was like 8 months pregnant. And I was like, I'm a little busy over here right now. Like, wrote chapters and like sent them to me, and then I was like fine, and so I'd write like it was a double narrative. It never got published, but it was a double narrative. I would write back the other narrative and just send it back to her to make her kind of go away, and then she kept just sending back another chapter, and it took us like a year, but we finished the book. So that's kind of our origin story, but it did take us 5 years to actually get an agent and get a publishing contract from that point.
And that book
It was
ended up
not
being
for that
your
book.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, that
Now
book.
the one act play, can we have access to it and do a reading of it on the next episode?
Oh my God. You know what? I'd be fine with
I
that.
think there might be
I
some
think that,
problematic stuff in there. It was the early 90s.
oh,
I gotta look at
you're right. We should look at it again. I don't, yeah. We probably need to do an edit or something first.
it. You know what's amazing though? In my mind, when I came across it, I was like, oh wow, because this was amazing. I remember turning it in and thinking, this teacher is gonna like shit when he reads this. It's
What,
so
did we
amazing.
get a grade? Is it graded at the top?
I'll look. It's
I
not
don't
good. It's awful.
It's terrible. It is the worst thing I think I've ever read in my life. It's really bad.
But
I'll read through.
I'm hearing that you came in with high confidence at the time.
Oh yeah.
I think it's
And
just
then for many years after,
Yeah. Well, that
we thought it
actually
was amazing. Like,
ago when I found it, I still felt really good about
Okay.
it.
I'll say for myself, I have this interesting sort of it's like an inverse timeline situation. Whereas when I started writing, there was a stretch when I thought I was incredible. Like I was just like, oh, this is people are just will be pining for this. And then somehow over the course of it, I get probably like objectively a better writer, but somehow less confident. It's like a big X on a graph.
Right.
It's
yeah.
amazing how
Because you don't know what you don't know. I think you don't know what you don't know, and then you kind of know.
Right.
You're like, oh.
like, oh, I need more work on this.
Yeah.
I think too,
Right.
and this is I think more of a co-author thing, but Lisa and I, when we're having fun writing something, we're like cracking each other up in the draft, and then we'll like send it to our agent, and they'll be like, "Yeah, this actually totally isn't working, or this isn't funny," but we thought it was so funny because we're just maybe it's like an inside joke, or like I don't know if that goes on with you guys.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think we had one recently where Greg made like a Fletch reference and I was like laughing out loud and then our copy editor was like, I don't get this.
Who is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably. It's probably who is
I think
that.
it's like
Yeah, I mean we kind of live and die by our Easter eggs because we have to keep each other entertained, you know. I mean,
Right.
that's like half the thing is or in the case of writing like thrillers, like stumping the other. Like, okay, how's he gonna write himself out of this corner I just painted him into?
right.
But
Oh,
Right.
because you guys do it kind of like we do that way. I think it's so much more fun.
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, this is a really good segue though. The Greg, I loved your inverse timeline of confidence. It's a good segue to imposter syndrome because if we all had this kind of like naive sense of confidence and passion when we were younger and that is like dissipated to whatever degree, that makes me wonder like where is imposter syndrome, if at all, coming up for you guys, Liz and Lisa? Like, is it in your writing, publishing, other areas of your life? Do you experience it?
It's almost better. I was just thinking about what you said. It's almost better when you're in your bubble. Like I don't think you have it when you're in your bubble and before you're published. Like we didn't have it. And even that first book we wrote, we didn't have it. And I think it's just once it's like in someone else's hands and maybe they actually like it, but they start giving you feedback, then you start questioning. It would be nice to crawl back in that little bubble, and that's where we are again. Like we're writing something right now and we just turned it to our agent, but we got to be in this bubble with it where we just felt like, it was this amazing, thing. And then you have to give it over and, they like it, but then they have feedback and it makes you start, it shifts everything. So I'd say for me, it comes up in the actual like writing, I think, like in just the words on the page. Like I feel much, I guess that maybe that's everybody, but you feel better about things when it's just between you or just between you and someone else. And then when you open it up, it's like, oh, okay.
Right. There's that level
Here we go.
vulnerability tied into that.
Yeah.
Was part of the for you two sort of deciding initially to work together was having that support system built in, part of either the appeal or just maybe giving you a little more confidence to jump in?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's nice to like always have each other, and we see authors like building all these writing communities, and those are great. And we have a lot of author friends. We typically don't like join officially a lot of the author communities, I think, because we have each other. So I think that's nice. I will say though, I think that we have always struggled like being on the same team, even though we're writing together. And I think it's something we've more recently kind of figured out, and it brings, like, I will say it brings a lot of confidence, I think, to both of us, and like an ease to the writing that even if we write pretty easily and we didn't ever like argue about writing, I think that, like really feeling like Lisa's on my team gives me a lot of confidence as a writer. And I think it makes me a better partner. Because I think when you're working in a duo and someone's feeling insecure about something or resentful, you may be able to get the book done and but it does rear its head in like little ways, that I think that affect things and affect your relationship. And then one other thing I wanted to say about imposter syndrome that I think lends into it is social media too. And I think like what you were saying, Lisa, I totally agree. But I think I was texting with a debut author today that I'm friends with, and this person was really leaning into what other people were doing and maybe what she should have done like these other people. And I think it really makes you question, if you're not having success, that the only way you could have had success are these people that are displaying their success online. And that's not always real, right? Like how many times, I'm sure, listen, Greg, like, have you like seen an author just like looks like they're absolutely killing it, and then they're in town and they go to dinner with you and they're like, oh, I'm totally like, this is a mess, I hate my publisher, I hate my agent, like, and you're like, oh wait,
Right.
So I think that creates a lot of imposter syndrome, because we're looking to everyone else's successes and saying, why not me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way. I think that is another positive to having each other, because we still get into that. We have gotten into that rabbit hole quite a bit in the past. We're much, much better about it now. But we would still have each other. So I could text her something and then she could talk me off the ledge, and then it goes away a lot faster than I think if you are a solo author and you're by yourself with this book. Like you're the person, I don't know who you're talking about, Liz, but the debut author, just a solo person, right? So she's like on her own, and that I think would be a lot tougher to deal with, imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, half of our weekly calls when we're actively writing a book or like in revisions is basically like a therapy session. Mostly me needing therapy from Craig. Just like affirmation, validation, and reassurance, because of just exactly what you're talking about. Like the portal that is Instagram. I can scroll and it's hard too, because I feel happy for people who are succeeding,
Right.
especially people I know who've worked for a really long
Right.
time on a novel, or, getting published, or working with a new agent, whatever the situation. Like, we even know the backstories, but there is that voice in me that says, like, why aren't you on that list? Or why didn't you have that many people at this event, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. And yeah, I think, we haven't yet to talk to a guest on this show who hasn't experienced that. So it's like we're all having this universal experience, but we can't seem to find a solution for it, and it would be great if we could. And maybe the solution is just talking about it, acknowledging it, recognizing it.
Yeah, and I also think also understanding that the two things aren't mutually exclusive. Like you can be super happy for somebody, you can also be jealous, and you
Mhm.
also can make you question yourself and
Mhm.
what you're doing, but you still can be really happy for that person. And I think that's something we had to recognize and be like, it's okay to like acknowledge like these feelings and still be very happy for that person. We're all in the same boat. It's so hard when you see an author that is succeeding where maybe you have struggled. We all know that author like has earned it because
Yeah.
we're all in this and it's a very hard business, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about as well is, and in fact, it's one of the things that helped to inspire us taking the dive to do this podcast. Is on your podcast when you guys were doing the rejection series and all the struggle bus episodes, just having that kind of being willing to have that kind of transparency and to discuss those things that traditionally, I think, yeah, we're not necessarily either encouraged to discuss, or that a lot of people maybe think they're the only person feeling this in the world and everyone else is floating along on Instagram, as you said, as appearances would lead us to believe, right? Was that for you? Did you guys really find that to be therapeutic, cathartic, helpful, all of those things as you went?
Yeah, we did, but I mean, you never want to see anybody else struggle, or we didn't find like entertainment in their stories, but there is like a comfort in that, to share and to talk it through. And I honestly think, some of these authors that we talked to, they were just so happy to be able to like talk about it. It's just something that for whatever reason, we all feel like we have to keep a secret, because if the publishing world knows we feel this way, then maybe they won't want our next book, or maybe that agent won't want to read our, or whatever. And so we all stay quiet and try to, present the best image possible, where I just think we're moving away from that just as a world anyway,
Mhm.
like where we just, it's better to be a little bit more transparent. So I think for me, it was very helpful. It was a really hard time for us when we decided to come out with all that stuff, and to be able to talk to other people just helped us in that way to get out of our bubble, which wasn't a good thing at that time. The bubble can be good and the
Mhm.
bubble can be bad. And at that point, it wasn't good because we were just like swimming around in our own, and so getting it out and talking about it, and then having other people share really, I would say really helped a lot. Like just even after recording the first one, we felt better, just like, okay, and who cares what happens now? It's out. We've said it
Right.
and we can,
Yeah.
Right.
move on. And I think that's kind of like where you have to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
We were really, really surprised at
Mm-hmm.
the response when we didn't. I will say, and Lisa, I think you would agree with this. When we recorded that, we were just like, F it, we're recording this, we're gonna say it. We actually did
Mm-hmm.
not do it for anyone else. We weren't like, oh, this is gonna go viral. That never ever crossed our minds. It actually really took us by surprise. Um, I remember we did the video, like we did this reel where it was like, have you wondered what's going on with us? Like, we're eating shit basically. Like, come listen to this thing. And it was crazy. Like it like took off. We were getting DMs from like like all kinds of people. Like it was really a crazy thing. It really hit a nerve, and we truly were just doing it for ourselves. Like, even if 5 people listened to it, we just decided that we were going to record it. And what's a little interesting side story is we had tried to record that episode like 3 or 4 months prior,
Oh
Lisa.
yeah, I forgot about this.
And I think we weren't ready because it was such trash and the way we did it. And I thought we sounded whiny, and we actually deleted it. We spent it
Mm.
like an hour recording, and I said, we can't post this. Like, I think I left your house and then I called you and I said, we can't
It
post
was yeah, it was not good. It wasn't authentic. It was like we were trying to talk around it and try to,
Mm.
like, touch on this but not say that. And I think when we finally did it, we were just like, we're just gonna just say whatever we want to say,
And that
Mm.
and so be it. Like, we just were really didn't. We thought, I don't know what we thought was going to happen with our writing career, but we didn't have a lot of hope at that time. So
Mm.
we were like,
and that unvarnished truth really
Well, and
hit
it
it.
record it
clearly
and go.
it struck a nerve. I mean, I remember listening to that episode, and if you guys don't mind, maybe you can give like a little capsule about what you were talking about for people who might be listening to this, and then run over and listen to that episode and all of your episodes. But I think the Struggle Bus series in particular, because that was an offshoot. But yeah, the
Yeah.
degree of vulnerability that you guys had and the kind of honesty was not something that I had heard before, like outside of like drinks or dinner at a convention or events. It was like, wow, okay, I need to hear
Mm-hmm.
this. And it was bringing up things in my own experience. So do you mind maybe doing a little bit of a summary?
Yeah. Do you want to, Lisa, or you want me
Yeah.
to?
So it was, it was 2020. So it was just a bad time for all.
Mm-hmm.
Summer of 2020. And right, Liz, I'm right on the timeline.
Yes.
That's when it kind of all started.
Well, we had a
We had
book.
a book
July.
come out
Yeah.
in July of 2020. And I don't think I need to tell you how that went. And then we ended up parting ways with our agent and our publisher. So we had a book that tanked, no publisher, no agent, and another book that wasn't that good, that we were trying to sell, that wasn't that good. And we were just like rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in that first episode, that's kind of what we talked about was, the low, the low point in our publishing career, because there was a time that we really thought we had like made it. The Good Widow came out and we're like, oh, I remember turning to Liz and I said, this is it.
You
This is
did.
what all the hard work's been for. I actually said those words at this like
I
Amazon
remember where
party.
that Amazon party at
Oh
BEA.
my God. It was like our book was everywhere. We just
Yeah.
felt like, we worked so, at that point, I mean, we had several books before that were just okay. This particular book, we were like, this is what we've been working so hard for. And like, and no, that wasn't it. And we weren't just going to sail after that. I mean, that's the
But
thing.
in
And
defense, they had a drink named after the
they
the
did.
Amazon party at BEA, and I
It
felt we
was,
made it.
I thought that was it. I mean, because we didn't really know what this is it meant, but like the book was selling in like a way that felt like, okay, this is really selling, and things are going well, and there's a drink named after our book, so I think, and then the next one was good, and then it was just kind of like, so we're kind of just like going up the roller coaster, and then so I think we were just like, really, like, is this what it is? You just work really hard and you can find the success, and then you crash and burn, and then you got to build yourself up again. And I think that's what we finally realized. Yeah, it is kind of what it is for most of us.
That's exactly what you have to do over and over again.
It is. You have to completely rebuild your house. It gets burned down. You're like, all right, let's go get this. Go get the wood. Let's build the foundation. Okay, you want to pour it this time, Liz, or do you? And and then you build your house again, and then the whole thing, and I think that is what it is for most.
Yeah.
Most authors,
Yeah.
and Yeah.
And not only on the marketing and the publication side, but also I find for myself, and I realize that I've had this conversation with a lot of other seasoned authors, where there's that thing of like you almost forget how to write a book each time you sit down to write a book. It's like you've never done it before.
Mhm.
You
Oh
have
yeah.
no frame of reference for what it is going to be. It's wild.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's like
Yeah. So
a
yeah, it's like you don't even remember how to build it. You're like, what do we
Right.
do?
Right. It's like now you don't even have the blueprints. You have to draw the blueprints before you rebuild the house.
Right.
yes.
You're right. I made it sound too easy. I forgot about the part where you totally forget how to build
Yeah.
the house.
Oh yeah.
You have to like start over on that
Right.
too. Yeah, I forgot
Unreal.
about that part.
And yet we're drawn
And
back to
there's
it
this
every time.
element of,
I
well, I was just
know.
thinking when you were
We
talking,
are.
Lisa, like there's this element of it's a job where you work really, really hard and the payoff is not necessarily equal to the amount of work you've put into it. So you can write the hell out of a book. You can do all of the promoting yourself and the marketing and the the videos, the social, the, everything, everything, everything. And then it's like met with a shrug, or something happens in the world that eclipses it, or whatever the outcome is, but you've still put all of that work and heart and tears into it. And that's what's so kind of unfair about the Greg has talked about this too. There's no promotions, there's no like pension, there's no clear ladder when you're writing. You're only as good as your last book as far as the business side is concerned. So how do you keep going? And it seems like we've all kept going because we have a counterpart to say like, we're going to keep going. Like you can't give up. But have you guys ever been at the point where one of you has said like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I can't do this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take this. So I think I personally have struggled. Not, and it has nothing to do with Lisa. I love writing with Lisa. I would never want to write on my own, but I do. I mentioned to you guys, I do. I have a job too. I have a. I did write full time for 3 years, and I just wasn't for me. So I went back to my pharmaceutical job, and so I have to balance that. And so I think after this last, we had a book come out last July, Forever Hold Your Peace, available now, and it hasn't done great. It's got some exciting things that might be coming down the pike for it. But whatever, it hasn't done great. Now we're sitting down. We have another new agent, right? So we have who we love, and we're talking about like, where do we go from here? And for me, I was like, I want to love doing this, or why am I doing this? Because I make a living like at this other industry. So like, I want to do this because I want to do this with you, and I want to write this particular thing. So we kind of had, and I think we always struggle with that. And I think I felt a lot of guilt for feeling that way. And we've worked out a lot of things with us, and we were able to have probably the most honest conversations, even though we've been friends for 30 years. We were able to have like really honest conversations. Like, if we do, this is what I need. These are my boundaries. And she's like, these are my boundaries. And we came up with an idea we loved, and it has been so fun to write. And I probably have enjoyed writing more in the last 8 months than, I don't know, years. I mean, maybe since we wrote The Good Widow, which was really enjoyable to write. But so for me, like I just realized that I need certain things, and I have to be doing it because I want to do it, and I want to do it with her, or it's just not worth it because of all the things that we talked about, right? Like it's otherwise it's and I know some people are doing this and it's like their main source of income. And you were talking about, people hustling. Like you just really have to hustle as an author these days. You got to do an Amazon original, and you got to do this, and then this, and your podcast, and it's, so it's hard sometimes, I think, to center yourself in the whole reason that you're here, which is writing.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned sort of coming together for this latest book idea. That got me thinking, where do you usually get ideas from? Or is it things that you've been talking about, mutual interests, something that one of you will come across and, you'll kind of pitch to the other? How does that tend to go?
we keep a shared note,
Mm.
you know, on the phone, and we'll just go in there and just pop ideas in. And the one we're working on now, I mean, Liz had a dream and just
Mm.
woke up with this fully formed concept, which is always really, I like that personally. It makes my job a lot easier. And I would say though, I mean, she's more of like ideas person. I'm not as good with just coming up with the original concept. I think most of our ideas, like you've come up, Liz, with the idea, and where I'm good is coming in with like, okay, so this is how we could tell it. These are the people. This is like that, and that's kind of what I did in TV too. I was never the greatest at coming up with the ideas, but I could produce them. Like, okay, we'll start with this, and then we'll like want
Right.
somebody else. So I think that is what another thing that makes us, um, a good team. So I'd say, and Liz, in her line of work, she does a lot of driving, so she's just like things pop in her head, and she'll just put it
Yeah.
in the system. I saw you popped one in there a couple days
Oh,
ago, which
that's
I
what
I
you-
like, but I was like, is that
I already
historical
forgot what
fiction?
it
Or
was. I
it's
already
like
forgot.
historical fiction. We have to talk about it because I don't know, but I like the idea.
You know, it's funny, and we can't say much about what we're working on right now, but it did stem. We went to a literary conference and had kind of a moment there that wasn't great, and it really, and I think it will actually lend a lot into this imposter syndrome and this
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing.
good
But
for this topic.
yeah, but in
We
it,
can talk about it kind of. We
yeah,
can.
it's just about like that voice in your head that
Mm.
tells you, that maybe is negative or maybe isn't, it is always kind of bringing you down. And we kind of had to face like why we act the way we do sometimes, and particularly when we're at a literary thing, and why, and like the why. So we had like us, like with us, we'd have like 2 days of like talks, like we was like like talked about for 2 days, and then I went to bed. I think like the third night, and I woke up, and this is never. I wake up with ideas, but I actually woke up with a fully formed like plot all the way through. And I on the note, I never do this because like what I just put in there was probably like 2 lines. I wrote a whole back of the book like synopsis, and
Yeah, it was your
never done.
most fully formed idea, and it was just on the imposter syndrome note. I mean, it was that comes up. That came up kind of just like out of the blue. It was at a like one of those literary festivals, and you know being around other authors and starting to like sort of compare, like, okay, who's speaking when and who's on what panel. And I mean, talk about it, imposter syndrome at that point. It's like, and I was in a really weird headspace. And I don't know. I just, I'm kind of glad I was, because we got a good idea out of it. But I was in a really weird headspace, and like, a bunch of kind of stuff happened where we're like, I was like, what are we even doing here? And I was just getting like so negative, which I can do, and that really wears on Liz. And so, yeah, but it's those kind of book events or big things
Yeah.
where you're with a lot of authors that can bring it out too. Not even, you're right in front of the people. It's not even social media, and it's like,
Right.
oh, you
Well,
know,
there's a interesting kind of connection between the dream and then the festivals, because the last time I heard a writer talk about a book coming to them in a dream was Dennis Lehane talking about Shutter Island. And he told a story how he
Oh,
like had a dream of the whole book, wrote up, like feverishly wrote it, went upstairs to bed, and a member of his family was like, what is this? This is great. Maybe it was his wife. And he's like, I don't even know what that is. Like, he wrote it in a fugue state. And it was so cool to
uh,
hear. And I kind of got the same chills, Liz, when you were talking about that. That's kind of like
I'm getting chills by you saying that.
yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
just Dennis Lehane also talking about having imposter syndrome himself was so
I
amazing.
mean,
It's
right.
like
It's like
every
you
book
hear
he's
that,
ever
you're like, how is
written
that
is
even a thing?
exactly. And
Yeah.
this was at
But
Thriller
it is.
Fest. And that
Oh,
whole experience of being at Thriller Fest kind of after pandemic as a
Yeah.
writer instead of as a book
Mm,
publicist, as I used to be years and years ago. And I felt all of this compare and despair. And I just felt like I didn't belong. And it's like comparing like who else you're on a panel with and the time slot and how many people are in the audience and like, oh, we're
Right.
up against Louise
The
Penny.
time
Like,
slot's a
no
thing,
kidding.
right?
Yeah. And
Oh yeah,
Thing,
we were
right? It's a
Wednesday.
thing, right? It makes me feel better if you feel like the time slot's a
Sure.
thing.
We
Okay.
were Wednesday at So we decided we were going to name our memoir when we write it Wednesdays at 2 because we were like the opening panel at VoucherCon.
We're like the opener for the opener for the opener for the opener for the main act on like a concert. You know, like we're like out in the parking lot.
they haven't
That's
even
what
put
we
the
were.
water on the
That's what
table with a
began my
cup.
like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No, I was
People were getting their people weren't even checked in. Like it was.
No, I was talking to someone, an author, last week, and they just got their panels back for something coming up, and I was like, "When's your panel?" And they were like, "Wednesday at 3." I was like, "They hate you."
It's better than Wednesday at 2.
I
We were.
was like, "You haven't made it yet. Talk to me when you're Thursday at 3 or Friday at noon.
It's good to
Then we can talk."
you know, this harsh reality is it's a good learning stone for young authors coming in.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
so fickle
Oh my
too, because
gosh.
you could get to Thursday at 2 and then be back at Wednesdays at 3, 2 years
Or
later.
Sunday at 8 a.m.
Right.
Like, then it's even
Oh, the 8 a.m.
worse.
is brutal.
Sunday at 8. We decided Sunday at 8 a.m. was comparable because we were, of course, trying to feel better about. Because she walked up and I'm like going through the thing, and I don't even think we made the thing. Hey, wasn't that what started it up? We weren't even
In the book.
And there was
Yeah.
people. There were people that their thing is to get authors to sign their picture in the book,
We
and so
were
they
like,
come to our thing and they're like flipping the pages, and I'm like, "Oh, we're not in there," and they're like, "Oh," and they just walk away like really awkwardly.
it was in the panel we were on. It didn't even fit. We didn't even. It was so bad. God.
But we got a book idea out. Lisa had like a meltdown, and we got a book idea out of it.
I did. I was like looking through the thing, and she walked up, and I was like, "We're not even in here."
But
I think I want to go home.
yeah, but it's amazing. Sometimes that chip on your shoulder is enough to get the creative process really flowing.
Yes.
Right.
So
Yes.
great motivators.
True. I mean, I'm fully accountable that I chose to look at that whole thing through a very negative lens when I completely see how I could have looked at it. We were there, we were invited to speak on a panel, all the things. So I just chose to look at it through.
Good. Yeah, but it was good.
Yeah.
Because it forced us to have a lot of conversations about how we relate to those type of situations and how, like, the cause and effect. If I do something, the effect on her and vice versa. And it really led to some conversations. I think that were the root of a lot of things that kind of grind on the two of us. And it's weird. It's having that conversation changed everything. And if you want to hear something really weird, is this whole literary conference took place. There was a blue moon last fall. And so there was a blue moon that night that it was like, we were all like crazy. And then I did some research on the blue moon, and it basically, a blue moon, that's what it can be, like a catalyst for change. So it can be a lot of different things, but a lot of people believe, like, in a blue moon, if you are open to it, that you can, like, it can change everything. And what's weird is I do think that thing, yes, it was a good book idea, but also changed kind of the framing of how we relate to each other, after all this time, in a really positive way.
Okay. I was going to ask actually earlier if your communication style has changed over the course of you guys being creative partners. I mean, having known each other for the time you have.
Oh yeah, it's changed. It's changed many times. It's like different iterations of it. I'd say now we're probably in the best. I think part of that's getting older too. Like, it's a lot of things. When we first started out, we just took for granted, like, oh, we're friends, so we don't need to have any conversations about how this is going to go. We're just going to write a book. But then we didn't even think about all the business part and how we are so different. And in how we approach things like that, negative situation being one of them. Um, I'm calling a negative situation. See, it wasn't, but like I chose to look at that way. She didn't. So like that is just one example of how different we are. And we ended up at this um, lunch with our agent and our editor, and it was the first time that we like were at like a business thing together. And it really, we had to have a pretty interesting conversation after that, after how it went, because we weren't prepared for it. We didn't know like who are we together? We knew who we were individually, but we didn't know who we were going to be together. And you do have to figure that out, kind of like your roles. Um, and so that was probably the first talk we had, but we had many, over the years, because we'd come across different scenarios we didn't expect, and then we'd have to shift again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd say we're in a probably.
Yeah, I'm
What?
curious. I was curious about Liz.
Yeah.
Like, because you guys were friends and became authors, like, was that issue for you? Like, the business piece of it. Like, okay, this is his lane and this is Liz's lane.
I was very fortunate in that Liz, as she mentioned, previously, had worked in publishing on the business side of it for almost 2 decades. So we had known each other we met each other freshman year of college. We'd known each other. We had actually been in the theater department together. Had a theater group that Liz started up for a short period of time as well.
Oh.
So we had that background. So we had a creative background together. We also grew up very similarly, had very similar family dynamics backgrounds. So I think we have a shorthand in that regard. And we also grew up reading and watching a lot of the same stuff. So we also had a lot of the same sort of frame of reference in terms of source material. So I think we had a good shorthand. And again, I was really the beneficiary of her being very savvy on the business side, whereas I knew nothing on that end of it. So that was a huge benefit to me. And I, continue to appreciate that. I would say, yeah, for me, I probably got the better end of that deal in terms of the partnership.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I think in terms of like what lane is whose, in the beginning, it was pretty clear that like kind of anything like on the business side I would navigate, and our agent, of course. Mm-hmm. But that I think felt like an advantage initially, and then I realized it was a disadvantage. Like knowing everything I knew about what went on the publishing side and the decisions that were made by editorial, sales, distribution, et cetera, like I knew when we got our first print run of our second book, they weren't going to take a strong stance. And someone who hadn't been in publishing might not know that. And I felt disappointed, rejected, and so on. Whereas Greg has really been able to have, I think, a much more positive, pragmatic, eye on the whole arc. And I think what we do the best together is like balance each other emotionally. Lisa, I think I'm more like you, where I tend to like frame things more negatively than Greg does. So if I'm feeling a certain way and it might be impacted by my knowledge of the industry, Greg will kind of bring me back to like, well, like we're here, we're doing the thing we wanted to do. Like, this is our dream, and like, don't worry about it so much. And I think I can sometimes give him input that's like, yeah, this is a good sign that they're doing X, Y, and Z, or maybe we should take this into our own hands. And I think where we differ as a writing duo with you guys, and you've been very open about this in your podcast, which I love, is that you are kind of openly, I don't want to say fighting, but that's the name of your podcast. You fight so we don't have to. And Greg and I don't fight or confront, which maybe is not so healthy. But I think because Greg mentioned we're both so non-confrontational because of the way we grew up, there are definitely ways that we can like intuit when the other person like needs something or doesn't need something.
Mm-hmm.
And
ironically, I was gonna say, ironically, we don't really fight anymore. So I was like, maybe that's why we haven't recorded any podcasts. Like,
yeah, we're boring. We've become an old boring writing couple.
Yeah.
Well, you're leaning into. I was just going to say briefly. I mean, it's wonderful to hear that you're being able to devote your creative energy. I know you mentioned earlier that you're in the editorial process on the new book.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
For agent, yeah, it's not sold yet. So we're doing our agent was an editor. So we basically she gave us kind of like an edit letter, which was nice. So we're working through those
but
right
that's going to be nice to be able to take all of your creative energy and put it into the work itself. I mean, I would imagine that feels good.
Right. Instead of, yeah, because the other things can be distracting if you're putting energy into those things. So yeah, it is nice and
Right.
probably says something about like why you're enjoying it so much, Liz, why we're enjoying it more and like having more fun because
Yeah.
I feel like I need to knock on wood though, but like
I know. I say the thing about
if
night not fighting. I'm like, oh God, now we're
I
gonna
know, I know.
Did I
know
just
about
jinx you
something.
guys? I'm sorry.
It's
I thought the same thing. I'm like, but no, I'm knocking on wood. It's fine.
it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I think like it's easy to kind of dilute your time. And not that like social media and those things and podcasts don't matter. They do, and we've benefited from all of them quite a bit. But I do think sometimes it depends where you're at with your career. Like, do you have a book coming out? Like all these things. Like right now, we don't have any of those things, so we kind of had to take a step back and be like, is this furthering our career? And if the answer was no, we let it go. Even we run our local TV station every in San Diego every month doing the Fox book club, and we walked away from that too. It's fun, and it's fun to say that you're on TV, but we've done it for 3 years, and we're so happy we got the opportunity. I mean, they're so nice, but we had to really say like, is this doing anything for us? No. And so we walked away from everything. Although weirdly, I'm having a weird Poshmark. I've been like Poshmarking and opened up a Posh store. So I've put all my like weird energy into that. But for some reason, I think because it's separate from writing, it doesn't feel like it dilutes from my creativity, if that I don't know if that even makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I'm just having
There are a couple of Poshmark references have ended up in the book, and I've let them stay.
Thank you.
But we'll see. We'll see if they get past me after me, or if they get through.
Here's the seed of the next bit of tension. We've
Right.
Yeah, I know.
we've undone all that good work.
One of the things that I loved your last book and Forever Hold Your Peace, and it was different than your previous books. It was a pivot for you guys genre wise, and I was kind of reading it with your past books in mind and waiting for like someone to die. Like,
right.
myself, like that's not what this is. But I've recently started self-identifying as a mood reader, and I have to tell you that like putting down some of our stuff and picking up your book was so wonderful because it's funny. It's not, I don't want to say it's light because that's minimizing it. I mean, the mother-in-law character is genius. But it's different. It's definitely different than your past books. And I'm wondering, how did you come to making that pivot and what was that like? And did you have imposter syndrome about kind of writing in a different genre?
It came sort of as born out of that same feeling of just like, we're just gonna do whatever we want now. It was kind of like, what's gonna make us happy? And we had written a different book that was not selling. And, who knows why? It just wasn't. And so we pivoted and it was like, okay, now what? And because we had that one all ready to go before our book came out in July 2020, thinking the publisher would pick that one up and we'd keep moving on like we always did. And then that didn't happen. So then our new agent tried to sell it and she couldn't. And I think we were just like, we're just going to write something that we want to write. And who cares if anybody even wants to buy it or read it. And, we had a lot of fun with it. And it turned out to be kind of different than anything that we'd done, but in a really like fun way. And so I think, that's just why we really didn't And we've never really, stuck to one, for better or worse, we've never really stuck to one genre. So we do kind of bounce around, and it felt really good and fun to write it. So I just think that's what we
And thanks
did.
for reading it, Liz. I
Of
appreciate
course.
Yeah, thank you. You were the one. So thank you.
it. I think I saw your sale on Bookscan.
Yeah, I think I got an email about that one.
Yeah.
Thanks. I could have
Yeah,
just
and
sent
what we're
it to
writing,
you for free, but yeah.
what we're writing right now also is a pretty big change.
Mm.
I'm not even sure if it'll I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
It might
totally
be,
different
yeah.
again.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's a speculative fiction, so we'll see.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we're just like at a point, and maybe, we both turned 50 in the last, year and a half. And people always talk about, oh, when you turn 50, like this and that, and you don't care. But there definitely is something to it.
Oh yeah.
Um, where I just feel like less, I've always been like somewhat of a people pleaser, and I have trouble like creating boundaries with people. And when I turned 50, not that that part of me is not gone. It's part of who I am, but I feel like I've really been like, no, like saying no, like, no, no, like, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Like, and before I would have so much anxiety about telling someone no. I was always like, I'm just going to do it because the anxiety of saying no is going to be worse. Um, and it's funny because it actually, like, you don't know this as a people pleaser, but if you actually set boundaries that are reasonable and tell them why, it actually makes all your relationships better. But I think, like, as an anxious person, you think if I set bound whatever, then this person's gonna be mad at me or upset, or I'm going to disappoint them. And so for me, that's what 50's been. And it's been really good, and I think it's been really good for us. And we're just kind of like, we're just gonna do what we want.
Yeah.
If people want to buy it, great. If people want to read it, great. If they don't, well, that's okay. We enjoyed creating
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it really sounds like
Amen.
between these last couple of books and also, as you were able to open up on the podcast about some of the low point stuff, it seems like really, being emboldened and taking ownership of that is working for you. So,
Yeah.
For now. Yeah, we'll see. If this
Yeah.
next
Today.
isn't, you might have us back on again, and we'll be in like a big puddle of doom. The house will be burned down again, and I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Where are the blue?"
Off to get the wood.
well, that's inevitable.
On my way to Home Depot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. We should all be like, we should all have like, rewards, loyal, like rewards points programs going at this point with the amount that we
Right.
Seriously.
continue to rebuild that house.
Crazy. Such a crazy business.
Well,
It's a great business, but it's just crazy.
yeah. And it's not for the faint of heart. And I mean, I identify with people pleasing so much, and no is a complete sentence is one of the most powerful mantras that,
Yes.
I learned, but later in my life. So if there's people who maybe struggle with boundaries, whether it's creatively, professionally, personally, if they can kind of absorb that earlier, then that's like a big service. I think, one of the things
Yeah.
I just wanted to say about what I've noticed in your podcast and just how you interact with other writers is you're really generous giving people advice, whether you are doing it consciously or not. And that's something that I really appreciate, because I didn't always feel that way when I was like first starting out. And I felt like there was this kind of caste system. And if you were published or you were on the bestseller list or you did X, Y, and Z, you were kind of like in another stratosphere. And I didn't necessarily see those authors reaching down. They were just kind of looking
Mhm.
up. So I think that really goes far. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because, I think we can all kind of talk about like, oh, this book we wrote didn't sell, or this happened with the agent, or et cetera. And there's people out there who have had none of those experiences.
Yes.
And that's really
Right.
real too.
Yeah.
But I think what you guys are saying is like, it's really about the process. It's the craft, like fuck the business. We're
Right.
not going to care about the sales anymore. We're not going to care about the
Right.
reviews on Goodreads, the social media stuff. Like if you can liberate yourself from that and really write, I hear you guys saying like, we're having fun.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a process. I mean, we cared about all of that stuff. I mean, we had like mailing lists for books to grammar. We would send them Christmas, and they deserve those Christmas gifts and all those things. And if we had the time, we would do it every year. But we had to like I said, it's that dilution of what we're actually being paid to do, which is to write.
Right.
But thank you for saying that. I do think that we truly do want other people to succeed. Even if we're not, I think that everyone has got to realize how hard this is and that we're all in it together,
Well, to kind of loop back to the beginning, I mean, when we first met you in San Diego before that event, that was our second ever book event that we had done as authors. I mean, we had just before that, we had essentially our hometown launch in New York, and we had a ton of our friends and family there. So that felt a little more like, it was a very soft opening. And then to go on the road,
Right.
to go on the road and be on the other coast and really know no one at that point, that it really meant the world to us, that you were as generous and kind and accommodating and selfless as
and filling 2 seats.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
you came to our event. That was huge.
It was funny because we were so excited to meet you. Like Lisa was like, I reached out and I'm so excited. They said yes. So it's so funny.
It was.
She's like, let me see.
I had no idea it was only your second. Like, just thought, it'll be so great to meet them.
Well, we were very excited to meet you.
And it was.
Yeah. Well, and then I think the next event we had, there was like one person.
Yes. We definitely had an event where it was supposed to be a co-event. The other author had a family emergency, and it was us. And we had one person in the audience. And
I don't know that they came there for that event.
I don't think they did. I think they wandered into the store, may have taken pity on us, and just hung out.
Right.
It was fantastic. And Liz, you were great about just essentially veering that into a conversation. Like, we just came out from behind the podium and just sat down and just started talking.
Yeah, we were like, let's cut the bullshit and just like hang.
Yeah. And we're actually, and Amy is, shout out to Amy in Houston. We're still in touch with her. We still,
Oh my God, I love that. Amy in Houston.
So
there's always an Amy in Houston.
Yeah.
Gotta love them. They keep us going. I really believe that. They really do.
I'm with you.
Totally. And I was just thinking that at Thriller Fest, they did the like signing table after your panel, and Greg and I were on different panels, and we ended up sitting together even when we hadn't been on the panel before, which was amazing because no one came by. Yep. And I just kept thinking, like, if I was sitting here by myself, because again, Penny was 5 feet away.
Right.
So
Been there.
Understandably. But there's these moments.
I sat next to Karen Slaughter. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
I remember that.
But if I was sitting there by myself, I would be like feeling really bad. And blessings to the authors who do that, especially first-time authors. But then I'm just sitting there bullshitting with Greg, talking about weird people we went to college with. So it's definitely been a huge support. Like, you're my human support person, Greg.
Aww.
So sweet. You have to laugh at those moments though, and that, I think like, our experience with that, like I want to just laugh at it because it's just, it just gets funny. It doesn't mean it's not like, oh damn, I mean, that actually kind of sucks. But I think in that moment, you just have to laugh that you're sitting next to Karen Slaughter, who's amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Like Steinke, Slaughter, and then you're, and nobody's there. Yeah. I think we have to learn to just laugh at those moments because it's all we can do.
What else can you do?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that occurs to me is you could just start signing Karen Slaughter's books. You could get the overflow sign.
I thought about it.
Okay.
I thought about it.
Excellent.
I'm not going to lie.
I probably would have taken
I tried to inch my chair a little like maybe they'll just think we're together.
I mean,
I was someone that time too. I can't remember who it was. I was trying to remember who it was. I remember what you're talking about.
I mean,
I don't know where you were. Were you on the other side of me, or were you in off in F's?
I think
Because
I was off,
sometimes we do get separated like that.
with the F people. I was by someone big. I'm trying to remember who it was. I was like racking my memory for an F author.
Yeah.
So
I'm just trying to be generous. I feel like their carpal tunnel would just appreciate the help.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
Public service.
totally. I thought about it.
Well, with our last minute or so, is there any like enduring advice that you give writers new and old, or that you give each other to just keep going?
What did you tell your debut author friend today?
I
Maybe
actually
that
was
you should.
almost going to look at the text. I basically told her, listen, if you need to take a break, and come back and be ready to write, because this is what the business looks like, and your experience is actually not unique at all. Although I know it's making you sad, and I'm sorry that it's happening. It's actually not unique at all. We've actually experienced every single thing you're saying, and I can think of 30 authors off the top of my head I know personally that have too. So I just told her, take a break, come back when you're ready and ready to love writing, because you have to do it for yourself. But again, that's a process, and I think that's something that's easy to say and almost cliche. And maybe you just have to get on the other side of it to be able to actually do that. But I also, one other thing I would say, that if this is the other thing I told her, if social media is making you feel badly about yourself and making you feel like you're making all the wrong decisions, then you need to step away and turn it off, take it off your phone for 2 weeks, because I do think that too. And we've really stepped away. As much as we love creating content for everybody, we've stepped away the last couple months, and it has really helped clear my mind.
Yeah, that's
such
I've
good
hardly
advice.
been on it in the last year. I would say, just if we have certain things, I will, but I'll forget to look at it for days. Like Liz will be like, "Did you see that thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't." It feels really good when I haven't seen that thing.
Yes.
That's good mental health advice, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well,
Great advice.
ladies, you are as generous as you are talented and kind and dedicated and hardworking, and it's wonderful to hear that you're having fun with the creative process again. That's we can't wait to
read
we can't wait to read it. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for all your compliments. You're just full of them for everyone. I feel like we need to give Greg one. I feel like Greg's given all of it. You need to give Greg one.
It's okay. I'm not good at taking them.
Greg's like, Greg, you guys are awesome, and we always think so thoughtfully and highly of you guys, and I'm so excited to read your next book. I'm excited for like the little pivot you've done in your own career in this podcast, and I can't wait to see you guys soar. I hope you just
we
hit it
learned
out
it from watching you.
We did.
Oh God.
Do you remember that commercial? We're all old enough to remember.
We sure are.
From watching you.
Sure.
Yes.
How can our listeners find you guys? What's the best way, since you're not really on social media?
Well, we still are. I mean, I'm still checking. We're at Instagram at Lisa and Liz, Facebook at Liz and Lisa Steinke, and our website is lizandlisa.com.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
You heard it here, ladies. Thank you so much for being here. We love talking to you, and we look forward to picking this up again soon.
Yes. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg is created and hosted by us, Elizabeth Keenan and Greg Wands. The show is produced and edited by Kate Hergut and the creator of Bookwild Podcast Collective. Our original theme music was composed by Scott Leeds, and Steve Luoma designed our logo. You can find us on IG at Imposter Hour Podcast and online at imposterhour.com. Thanks for listening.